Hi everyone, welcome. We had a bit of a rough start, but we're going to start now. So you should be able to see some slides, and I'm going to start from the beginning. So hopefully okay, good. I can see that I'm sharing my screen and what I'm sharing. This is excellent. No one's reading my emails. I mean, if you do read them, you should answer some, but I digress. Okay, so I'm Tanya Janca, and I want to talk today about shifting security everywhere. And I'm going to explain what that means, and I'm going to get into a whole bunch of stuff. But let me say what we're going to talk about today. So we're going to talk about what the heck shifting security left means and how we need more than just that. We're going to talk about how to have more comprehensive security, specifically security for software. So that is my main interest point, which is how to make sure the software we create is safe and secure, and how do we maintain it so it continues to be secure. We're going to talk about developer buy-in, because without them, we can't really get much done. And then security that works for the business and with the business instead of against the business. I see a lot of security programs and policies and decisions, and I don't know if you've ever seen someone pet a cat backwards, just over and over again, petting a cat really aggressively backwards. And that's what I think of when I see a lot of policies at different places where it's just not working for everyone else. So let's just go, let's start. So I call this my resting AppSec face, where I'm like, what have you done? But so sometimes marketing people get a hold of a term, they get really excited about it, and they go all in, and they can kind of ruin it. And pushing left and shifting left used to mean something. But now it seems to be like, buy my product. So let me explain. When we say we want to shift security left, what does that mean? It means we wanted, and we still want people to start security earlier in the system development lifecycle. And the SDLC, or system development lifecycle, is the process software developers follow to make software. And I want us to show up right at the beginning, at the kickoff meeting to start the project. We're like, we're doing this. Yeah. I want to have a security person there, and I want to support you the whole way through in creating your software. But this term shift left and push security left, it got turned into buy my product instead. And that didn't really help anyone except the marketers. And so what I feel we need is comprehensive security that covers while you're building the app and after it gets out into production. And we need to also make sure that the developers and the rest of the business are actually on board with us, because we can't actually get anywhere without them. And so if you learn just one thing from this talk, it's that shifting left is not enough. We actually need to shift security everywhere. And so I'm going to give a whole bunch of information about how we can make sure we secure the SDLC. We can make sure we secure it after it's out in the world, in production, and probably on the internet. And how can we make sure everyone else in the business doesn't hate us and our policies and what we're doing? And so I hope that this is in line with what you're hoping to learn today, and I hope I can offer helpful information. And so you're like, who is this? I'm Tanya Janca. I'm the head nerd at We Hack Purple. I do secure coding training and AppSec training. I'm also known as She Hacks Purple. And yes, in this photo, my hair is red, and now my hair is red and purple because I'm having trouble deciding, but that's okay. I wrote a book called Alice and Bob Learn Application Security. I've worked in tech a long time. I started some stuff. I do some advising. I'm a faculty member, blah, 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 blah. I'm very excited about software, and I hope you feel that this slide where I brag a bit, you're like, she seems qualified. I'll listen. Yes. Okay. So I like to tell people what we're going to talk about. Then we talk about it. Then I remind you what we talked about so that you remember as much as possible. And so we just learned shifting security left is not enough. We need that and more. And so next we're going to do comprehensive security. And then later we'll do developer buy-in, like how can we get them on board the AppSec train, and then security that works for the business. And then we'll conclude, and then there'll be some resources. And except the books, all the resources are free. So I can't make physical books for free. I don't have that power, but everything else is free in the resources section. Okay, so let's start. What does comprehensive security look like? Like, what does that mean? And so I'm going to split it into two. I'm going to talk about during the SDLC, and then after we've released it out into production, like this is a working piece of software that we have real users and the business is depending on it. And how do we keep that secure as well? And oops, there we go. And I like to break things into, we prepare to do the thing, we execute, we're doing the thing, and then how do we ensure we keep doing the thing? Because that is a big problem in tech, but more so in security, where we start off with this huge bang, and then we don't actually have enough staff or time, or we didn't think things through to actually support that thing. And then it kind of fizzles and falls apart. It's like, oh yeah, the security team used to do threat modeling 2 years ago for about 3 months. And so I want to give you a plan where you can actually maintain it. And so when we're preparing, so this is going to be the least exciting answer ever. I like to create documentation. I used to hate documentation because it would be way too long. And I found that it was hard to read because it was written in very formal language, and it was often written in security words and not in software developer words, because I was a software developer way longer than I've worked in security. So it's still double the time as a dev to security. And so I still think like them. And so like, I want documentation that's easy to read, that's very specific, and that's as short as possible. If we can give them 1 page instead of 2 pages, they're way more likely to read it, especially 1 page instead of 80 pages, which I have seen before. Okay, so things I'd like to create: security requirements. So every new project has a list of clear requirements that the security team wants. What activities will we do? What technical settings do I need to see? Be super explicit of exactly what you hope to see, and you'll get way more of it. If we're going to do a secure design review or an architecture document, give them a template that, again, is short and concise, and work with them on that. A coding guideline that has security as part of it, yes. A testing guideline, etc. So anything that you're expecting them to do, have documentation that's as clear as possible about how to do it. The next one, so I looked up threat because I wanted to talk about threat modeling on Unsplash, and this is what I got. I really don't, this image is like, ooh. So let's think of this in a nicer way. So when I start threat modeling, I try to do a really lightweight type of way that I do it. And I want to make it as easy as possible, especially the first year. And I try to plan like a single hour per project. And I want to make sure I have capacity. I've seen so many companies where they start threat modeling and they do 3 and they spend so much time on it. They never do the rest of the apps and they run out of steam, and then they have to go work on something else. You've got to make sure that you have enough cycles to actually do it. And so make it small and easier first, and then make it more complex if you need to and you think there's value there. So the next one is select a paradigm for reviewing designs and architecture. Do not make your template 50 pages. I swear I saw one that was 80 pages and I was like, no one's ever going to use that. That's nice, you built that. No one did use it. And I was on the security team that made one that was 6 pages, and people actually did it. Yes. It should be, so I like having a meeting with a whiteboard, and if you're virtual, you can have a virtual whiteboard. And then I ask a lot of questions and I draw out a diagram, like where is the data going? Is this encrypted, etc., like of all the architecture. And then I ask the questions, and then I'm like, well, I'd like to see if you could do these 3 small changes, so that then we reduce the risk quite a lot of the system. And usually they say yes, because they're still designing it, which means it's really easy to change. Another thing we want to do to prepare is provide tools to software developers and training so they can do at least one type of security scanning themselves. So I don't really care which security tool you give them, but give them something, show them how to use it, empower them to use it, make sure that they like using it. So you might need to choose the tool with them to make sure it works with their processes, but give it to them, because there's hundreds of them for every one of you. And so you can get a lot done and also gain some trust by like working directly with them. Another preparation thing I do is meet with the project management team and explain, from now on, I'm going to have these security requirements and these activities for each project. And this takes about this long, this takes that long. I need it to be in the schedule. Too many times I see projects and there's no security activities in the schedule, and the security team comes along, they're like, yeah, we want you to do this, just going to take 2 weeks. You're going to make them work every evening and weekend for a month to get that done because you didn't plan in advance. So you need to know the project managers and be part of the project. Another thing is, if you're using a CI/CD, awesome, figure out how much testing it makes sense to do inside of it and how much to do outside of it. So if it's long, there's false positives, it's slow, do it outside. You can still automate it. I have lots of thoughts on this. I'm kind of obsessed with this. And then put the things in it that are fast and like high value checks. So this is a decision I like to make before the project. So now let's execute. So we're actually doing a secure system development lifecycle. So again, meet with the project management team and ask for invites to the kickoff meetings. That's the best meeting to be there. Like, hi, I'm Tanya. I am your assigned security human. I am here to help you. I also try to, there we go. I try to ensure that my new security steps within the system development lifecycle are in the project schedule and in the requirements, so there's no avoiding them. And I like to, so your project requirements are part of the project. I try to do the scheduling of external contractors. So if there's a pen tester or something like that that you need to hire, I try to have a pre-existing contract ready, and I try to schedule that and make it easier for them if I can. And then I set up any testing that I'm planning so that it's automated and ready for them. So they're not like, oh, Tanya, like we need that next week, and then I'm not ready. I try to make time for the teams to check in with them. This is the hardest instruction or thing I want you to do in the whole deck. This is the hardest part because you'll be busy, because there's according to GitHub, there's 500 developers for every one security person. That is a lot. And so it's really, 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 really important that you check in and see if they need you, see if they're on track. Ideally, you're not assigned to 20 projects, you're assigned to 3 or 4 or 5 because you have other work you need to do, right? So go just randomly check in on them once a month. So now we're skipping from, so you're running the security in the SDLC to how do we maintain this? How do we keep our momentum? And in my opinion, so we see these are all developers and the trophy is a secure app. So I looked up champions and I found these ladies and I was like, yes, they look like champions to me. And so if you can create a security champions program, it can really help you keep your secure system development lifecycle on track. And I have so many blog posts and presentations about this. I'm very passionate about this, and I'm going to try to not spend an hour on this slide. It's hard for me. Another thing we can do is, or we want to do, is create any policies, create resources like perhaps instructions of how to do the thing we want them to do, and any sort of support from upper management for what we're doing. Like we need that or it won't work. And the second part, so we need to secure the applications that are already in production. Sometimes people call this legacy. I don't know. So some of them are really old and some of them came out last week, but as soon as they're out in the world, we still need to secure those. And sometimes people call that shifting right. Some people call it securing legacy apps, whatever you want to call it. We need to secure those too and ensure they continue to be secure and monitor that they're safe. Okay. So the first thing to prepare is inventory. I know this might sound really boring, and this is the picture I got when I looked up inventory and I really liked it. But if we are going to try to secure a whole bunch of apps, we need to know we know of all of them, 100% of them. There are tools that can help you do this. You can do this manually, but whatever you do, we need a complete list of all of your APIs, serverless, any sort of webby type of software. We need to know about it. And then I call it taking their temperature. It could be triage, whatever you want to call it, but run a scan. So if you just have one scanning tool, like a dynamic analysis, a static analysis, software composition analysis, like whatever security tool you pick, scan all of them once. So you can tell, oh, that app is on fire. That app looks pretty good. These apps look, so that you can tell where you need to spend your time immediately. You might be surprised to find out there's some stuff in production that might give you a headache. And so you want to know about those first. Okay, to continue to prepare, we want to purchase any tools that are needed and train people how to use them, and then create any documentation or policy or whatever you need. So if every single dev is supposed to be scanning with a software composition analysis tool, let's say, and then trying to migrate off of versions that, have a vulnerability, and you're calling that vulnerable part of that library, it's like, okay, we need to get off of those. You need to teach them how to do this. You need to teach them how to run the tool, how to understand the results, and then what to do. And so this can take some time, but once you do it, it's amazing. Another thing is we want to train an incident response team, whether it be to call the AppSec person when they see something that looks like an AppSec security incident, or the devs. So I do secure coding training all the time, and the end of the day is always how to spot security incidents and not mess it up. Because I've seen it so many times. So like, when do you call the security team? And so you training the incident response team, or the IR team as they're called, when to call you is so helpful. You'll save so much time and money. Another thing is, okay, so wait. So that was preparing, now we're executing. So now we are doing the thing. So I like to set up continuous scanning. So scanning, oh my gosh, so much scanning. But basically, ideally, every time someone checks in code or merges to the main branch, you run some scans. Oh, they kick off the CI/CD, you run a different scan. Every single month, you run a scan on like the code repository, on it in, like a pre-prod non-production environment, whatever it is you're going to do. And look at those results and figure out, like, is it getting better? Is it getting worse? Is there something new that's scary? Another thing we do, or I want you to do, is setting up logging, monitoring, and alerting for your apps and your APIs. A lot of companies, they don't monitor or do anything like that with their APIs because they're so small. Yeah, they still really matter, and they do most of the business logic in new apps. And so they're very valuable and very important. So make sure you include them too. So then we're going to execute some more. We're going to meet with our security champions, because remember, we started a security champions program. So now we're going to meet with them regularly. We're going to train them and teach them and keep them engaged. And it's really important to ask them, what do you need help with? What are you working on? Where can I be of assistance? So that you can support them. We're still executing. So I like to eventually, when I feel we're kind of mature, come up with a service level agreement for bug fixes. I like to start really gently and then move from there, because if you come in with, critical things are fixed in one day, but then your change request process takes 3 weeks, no one can actually meet your SLA. It's impossible. And then you look like a doofus. So don't look dumb, pay attention, feel what's like reasonable, and go from there. Also, I try to help developer teams become compliant, because a lot of the time they're not. And so some teams might have a lot of legacy and they're really, really worried that they're going to look stupid. And so it's very, very important that you give the team some help that need it, and give them more attention and more time, or more tooling, or more budget, or whatever it is, so that they can become compliant with your service level agreements. Okay, another thing in executing. So we're still just starting, we're just starting to execute. So I really like metrics. There's a new type of tool, according to Gartner and all of their special terms, called ASOC or ASPM. So an ASOC, application security, orchestration and correlation. What it does is basically, so Defect Dojo is free. It's the only free one, so that's why I mention it. But basically, it sucks up all the results of all your tools and then shows you trends. It shows you metrics. It makes reports for you. It helps you understand the complete picture of all of your apps. And it's so nice. So I really like having metrics so that I know how I'm doing and how my team is doing and how all the dev teams are doing, because that's important to me. Okay, so then if we're going to maintain, I have a bunch of steps to help us continue to do this. And so we need to continue to support this new culture. And I do a lot of like lunch and learns and public speaking. And I have to say, I sucked at public speaking when I started. I was very nervous for the first like few months, and I did it over and over and over again until I stopped being terrified. And then eventually I was like, let's do this. And it was my favorite thing, which might not happen for you, but you just want to get your message across about what's important. You don't have to have a fancy slide deck. You don't need to have 25 different cat memes like I do. You don't have to have special fancy slides. You just need to tell them what's really important and try to get across how important it is to you and why. I try to repeat secure coding training and incident response training once a year, at least, because they forget. I worked somewhere once and it was, I think it was 2016 or 2017. And one of the people said, well, they've had secure coding training. I don't know why they're so stupid. And the training was 5 years earlier. Yeah, maybe you've had some turnover. Maybe people forgot. Maybe technology's changed. It's like, oh my gosh, that's from 5 years ago. Yeah. I like to ask for feedback and then listen to the feedback. And so I change what I'm doing based on feedback from various different groups. Like if people are not liking what we are giving them, I try really, really hard to make it better. And so this is really valuable, whether you realize it or not. I want to ensure that someone from the AppSec team or security team speaks at the all staff meeting, because most companies have an all staff at some point, either every quarter or every year or whatever, and just give some updates about what the security team is doing and what you need from them, and be fast and short. Do not drone on or do death by PowerPoint for an hour. No one cares. I want to do inventory at least once a year, if not continuously. So if you don't have a product that continuously monitors and adds things to your inventory, once a year you need to make sure it's accurate, because it falls out of, it becomes inaccurate very fast. And we need to make sure that so this happens with apps that were supposed to be turned off. Sometimes people forget to turn them off, or they thought it was turned off and it's not, and people stop supporting it. That's really important. I like to look at my metrics every so often, especially for postmortems, and figure out how can we not have this type of incident again? Is that possible? Can we prevent this from happening ever again? That's a big thing for me. Or how could we have handled this way better and saved money, saved time, and save face? I like to create and follow up on my service level agreements, especially apps that are nowhere near close. So I met with this one team and they had 2 terribly old apps. One of their apps was 38 years old. And we ended up getting enough money to do a complete rewrite of one of them. And then the other one, we just had it at 4 client sites. So we actually added on a WAF to each one of their sites as part of the contract that year, and then configured it for them to make sure it was way safer for them to run it. And then we did some fixes, but we couldn't completely re-architect it. And so we reduced their business risk by a lot by working together. Okay, so now that we have shifted left, we know we need to do more than just that. And we have some comprehensive security. So we're not just shifting left, we have shifted security everywhere. We now need the developers to be on board with this. Like, we want the developers to be on board with what we're doing. So we're going to prepare, we're going to execute, and then we're going to maintain. Yes. I know I'm cheesy, but I really like high fives. Okay, so preparing for developer buy-in. So first of all, training. So once a year, I try to do big stuff, and then I try to do small stuff often. So let's say you have lots of cross-site scripting, do a deep dive on cross-site scripting 1 month and just tell them, like, we found 22 new instances of this month. Clearly we're doing something wrong. We need to smash this bug. I also try to train, well, actually, let's just go. So security champions, this is one of the ways that, like, this is what's helped me the most in doing AppSec, is having a security champions program in place, and like having those people on the dev teams that I trust and they trust me, and we work together on problems so their teams can soar. And so, prepping your program, making sure that, like, you've talked to people and you have some people on board for this, you have management support. I try to figure out office hours and tell people when, I'm always available, Thursdays 2 to 4, I just have this Zoom session open and I'll just be in my office if we have a stat. And like, I am just answering emails, waiting for people to come talk to me. My friend Vane did this, and she ended up having to have office hours every single day. And she's like, I got so much done. People brought everything to my attention. And almost every single day of the week from 9 till 10, someone was in my office. She's like, I'd arrive at like 8:45 and there'd be people waiting for me. And that's how I knew I had won their hearts. Like, yes. And feedback. So I ask them what they want. And then I try really hard to help them get it. Because sometimes they're like, we hate this tool. I'm like, cool. Let's pick a new tool together. And when our renewal comes, we'll switch. But until then, what can I do to make you not hate this tool? Sometimes I can reconfigure it and then they love it. And sometimes the tool's just got to go. I ask myself, so my friend said this, he asks himself, how do we feed into the developer's desire to create amazing apps? And how can we help them feel proud that their apps are secure? Like, yes. So I try really, really hard to make sure I listen and I pay attention and that my program changes. Okay, so next, developer buy-in. How do we execute? So how do we like we're doing the program now, what do we do? So I call this like connect and share. So connecting, so I try to meet once a month with each security champion to just check in with them and ask the questions that my friend Ray from Hello Secure taught me. So it's like, what are you working on? What are you going to work on next? Do you need any help? And the first month, they're always like, you know, this and like that, and like everything's fine. But eventually, when I ask, do you need any help? There's like 12 things. Or what are you going to work on next? They're like, oh my gosh, we're going to do this, blah, blah. I'm like, cool. Can I help you pick the new thing? Like, do you want feedback? Do you want assistance? Like, and all of a sudden I know what's going on. And that's really helpful. I try to have one security thing a month. It could be an event like a lunch and learn. It could be a newsletter. I met a guy and he's like, I write these like blog-esque posts on the security wiki. And then I send it in a newsletter once a month to everyone. And that, like, I'm afraid of public speaking, but I love writing. And it doesn't matter. It matters that the thing is that you're comfortable with it. And it doesn't really matter if you do an event that's in person or an event that's virtual or you send a newsletter. What matters is that you maintain it and you're comfortable doing it. And so I find that that's really helpful. I want to share information every time I can. I want to tell them, oh, this new, like, we're going to pick a new SCA. And then what is an SCA? Okay, we're starting to pick it. Who can help me pick it? Okay, so we've chosen this one and training is coming. Okay, now training's happening. You come to the training. Okay, now it's in place. Oh, here's its SLA. And constantly over communicate. Just enough that you're not being annoying. Try to go just up to the annoying point. I try to dance, flirt with that line. And I try to recognize people that are doing a great job. So it's like, this team fixed all their bugs in 1 week. Like, oh my gosh, they're amazing. Or like, this person fixed 6 bugs all by herself in 1 day. And I try so hard to make sure that they're receiving positive reinforcement. Because usually, I don't know how to say this, us security teams, we are the bad news bears. All we do is tell them bad news or when they've screwed up or why they're doing a bad job. And it would be so cool if when we showed up, we said nice stuff. We don't, like, I'm not saying don't deliver bad news. I'm saying we have to find excuses to also give good news and to congratulate and to give approval and recognition and even like gifts. Sometimes I'll send an email to someone's boss and I'll be like, I just need you to know that so-and-so did this and this is how it helped my team. And I want you to know I think they're doing a great job and I really appreciate them. So thank you for letting them work on this. And like, you should see a person's face when they find out from their boss that, oh, you sang my praises. No one is like, oh gosh, how dare you talk well of me behind my back. So now maintaining. So communicating. So I try to join projects, especially those for new tech, so I can help them make more secure decisions with their design, with their technology choices, etc. I try to perform consultations with devs when I have a new policy or a new process so that I can get their feedback, because I will do so much better if I learn from them. Like, they'll say, oh, well, actually, we actually do this every 2 weeks. So this would be way better. I'm like, thank you. I like to also measure. So I like to think of every moment as a teaching moment, whether it's good or it's bad. And so I try to teach like turn a little thing into a mini lesson and say it, during the next meeting or whatever. I used to work somewhere, and at the end of every big tech meeting, they'd say, we have 5 minutes left for kudos. And people could just put up their hand and they're like, I want to give this person kudos. They did this and it was awesome. And they would just say awesome stuff about other people in front of the whole thing so everyone could know that person did a good job. And the first time someone did kudos for me, I was like, ah. Yeah, it was awesome. Okay, measure. Like I said earlier, I really like to see all the results in one place so I can see trends, see who's doing well, who's not doing well. Maybe this one technology really is not cutting the mustard. And so it helps me get more engagement if I share some of those metrics that I'm allowed to share. I find that really, really helpful. I also try really hard to avoid blaming. So when I first started in security, I remember being like, how dare you break this policy? You're so terrible. And then instead I changed that to, why did you break that policy? Is it terrible? Does it stop you from doing your job? Did it conflict with your directive from your boss? Did we not give you the tools so that you could do that? Etc. When people break a rule, there's a reason, and it's not usually screw you, security team. It's usually they're between a rock and a hard place and they're getting crunched and they have to make a decision. Lastly, don't stop. So if you have started a schedule or a program or whatever and you drop it, pick it back up as soon as you can. Like maybe you're taking a month off in August. I am taking most of July off and I'm so excited. And so there's lots of, I'm going to lead up to things. I'm going to communicate that way and I'm going to start again as soon as I get back. Right. And so don't drop things. Make sure when you if you stop, pick it back up. It's really important. Don't give up, and help the devs with help the developers as much as you can with anything. Like whenever you make time for them, pay them attention, give them advice, or you email them, you're like, oh, you were talking about this last week and I didn't have an answer. Well, I did some Googling and I found this. I think this might help you. Stuff like that, it builds trust and it builds more secure apps. Okay, so this is the last main section. So security that works with the business. And this part's pretty important. Like I said, like the cat being pet backwards, like a lot of policies I see, I'm like, how am I supposed to get my job done with this crap? I worked at a company once and they had switched CISOs like 3 times in 1 year. Don't ask. And each CISO made us all do the security awareness training again. And they switched systems because they all had their preferred one. So I had to do security awareness training 3 times in the same year. And I wanted to poke myself in the eye. It was terrible. And they're crappy, boring systems. And I work in security, so I also already know this, right? And I was just like, anyway, so let's find security that works for the business too. And we're still going to prepare, execute, and maintain. And so one of my friends made this, except for instead of the security team, it was a very famous, very, very rich man. But every time you don't use security headers, the security team kicks a puppy. So this type of attitude does not work. Like the big bad security team that's here to tell you how bad you are, it does not work. Punishment rarely works. Positive reinforcement tends to work way better. Like if you look at statistics, it works so much better than punishment for most people, other than violent crimes, but I digress. And so this doesn't work. So let's find a plan that actually does work. And I chose this baby listening because we want to get feedback and listen to it. So I will ask people like, hey, we're going to do this. What do you think? What could go wrong with my plan? Like, will this work for you? Will this work for your team? Like, tell me, is this helpful? I ask them, what are they concerned about? Like, what keeps you up at night? What do you feel is missing? What stresses you out that I might be able to help with? I try to review all my policies and processes and see if there's room for improvement. Like a lot of places, where they would like rotate passwords every 90 days. I'm like, this is not working. We are done that now. We are going to have an educational session with everyone and tell them that's done and help them create a unique, random, long password that they can remember. And that's going to be their password from now on, unless it's part of a breach or we suspect breach. And so you can improve things. Like you have this power, you're on the security team. I try to ask the business units to tell me of any policies or processes that are causing friction. So there's like friction a lot between the security team and the developers. We want to soften that up anywhere we can, especially if we can compromise just a bit and it makes a huge improvement for them. And if we give in a bit, they're more likely to give in on other things that matter to us. It's called compromise, and we can do it and we can still get stuff. And just one more time, we need to listen. We have 2 ears and only one mouth for a reason. And so this is when I plan it out. And so when I'm executing it, so I love this photo, like the look on her face. She's like, people are going to do what to my app? So the first time I did a threat modeling session with a product owner, it just blew my mind. The developers and the technical folks told me certain threats that terrified me. And then the business person taught me threats I never even dreamed of. And so when you invite a product owner or like a representative from the business to a threat modeling session, they explain to you what matters to the business itself, not cybersecurity, not software development, but our core business and our core mandate as an organization, like what matters to us. And so we want to make sure that we really work on threats to our mission as an organization. And another thing is I report up often. If possible, I give access to a dashboard so that they can see for themselves. But when you do that, it's important that you explain the metrics. So I like to tell the story of the data. And I was on a webinar last week with my friend Eric Sheridan. He works at a company called Tromso. And he's like, when you see this chart, what do you see? And it was funny because I saw and interpreted the data in a completely different way than he interpreted the data. And both of them could have been correct, right? And so if the executives see it like, oh no, this is terrible, and you see it as, look how awesome we're doing, you need to make sure you explain why the data is this way. Like if everything jumps up, we have way more vulnerabilities. Maybe it's because you actually got a new tool that's actually good at finding vulnerabilities, or maybe it's because you were only scanning 20% of your apps and now you're scanning 100%, right? Like you need to explain so that their imagination doesn't run away with them to a bad place. I also like to tell them when a security project is coming, so they're ready. I like to get feedback whenever I create a new policy and just tell them all the time what's coming. So this year, the security team is rolling out a password manager. What the heck is that, you might ask? Let me tell you. So it's coming, it's here, you're using it. And so when you over communicate and you repeat things over and over, like I remember doing this, and by the time I had the meeting where I was like, okay, so the product is here and I'm onboarding teams, like everyone is known for months, Tanya. We all know. And I was like, score, it's worked. When people break a policy or avoid a process, figure out why and then try to fix it. Don't yell at them. I remember the first time someone broke a policy, I was so furious. I was like, how dare you break our policy? And I was really angry with him. And we were one-on-one. And he's like, but I did it so that we could complete our mission. And what had happened is they were supposed to close up shop at 5 p.m. and bring all the stuff back, wipe all of the data off the data drives, and then give it back to the company. But they were late, and we had to pay an extra day for hundreds of computers, and it was really expensive. And I was like, why? He's like, because it's our mission to help every Canadian vote. And we were at a university and students never vote. They never vote. And we're signing up people to vote. And it was 5 p.m. and there were still hundreds of people in line. So I talked to my team and they all agreed to work for an hour for free. Then another hour, then another hour. They worked till 8 a.m. They volunteered to work 16 more hours overnight, making sure that 18-year-olds and 19-year-olds could vote. And I was like, okay, so all is forgiven. You're amazing. It's okay. We had to pay some extra money because we completed our mission and we had the biggest youth turnout ever of any election. And so it was this huge, amazing boom for our mission. But yeah, stupid policy was broken. And so there's a reason, and it's really important you listen to it. And then maybe you need to change that policy. Maybe you need to account for maybe like a backup plan. If there's still people there, how do we handle that? And so I felt so stupid that I was angry with him and made him feel bad, when in fact, I feel he made the right choice. So try to remember that story. When someone breaks a policy, there's probably a reason, and ask calmly, not like me the first time, more like me now. Okay, so you broke this policy. There's probably a reason, right? There's probably some work thing you're trying to do. Can you tell me why this policy was in your way? Okay, so now we're going to maintain things. So I like to still perform consultations every time there's a new policy or process. I know that I'm a broken record saying this over and over again, but even I sometimes forget. And I remember I was like, oh, I'm just going to buy this tool. Like, that's my favorite one. And then I was like, oh, I have to ask them. And when I got all their feedback, we chose my second favorite tool, which is still a great tool, because of like a bunch of requirements they had. And the one that I like couldn't do that, or it would be really, 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 really inconvenient for them and time consuming, which is not acceptable. I try to perform one tabletop exercise per year. It's a lot of work, but it will gain visibility like nothing else to have the executives or the management team realize, you know what, that policy is there for a reason, or like, oh, us not keeping up with this SLA is how this happened. I try to speak at the annual all staff just for 5 minutes, maybe 10 maximum, about like, here's what's coming, here's some successes, thank you so much, all of you are doing a great job. Like, you know, this many of you have installed the password manager, this percentage of you have done this. I'm looking for 100% folks. And I know it might sound cheesy, but like positive reinforcement, like all the studies show, go better than saying like, all of you suck, you're doing a terrible job, meh. And I try to share information whenever I'm allowed to. So sometimes I can share security incident information, and sometimes it's not proper to do it. It's a bad decision from a security and risk perspective. But whenever I can, I try really hard to share. And that helps keep them engaged and interested and gives me an excuse to ask them, how's it going and what they need from me. And any excuse to start a conversation with people outside of the security team is good. Okay, so conclusion. Yes, that's right. We are near the end. So here's what we learned. We learned shifting left is not enough. And certainly buying a specific product is not enough. There's so much more. We learned about what comprehensive security is and how to plan it out and how to try to maintain it. We talked about getting developer buy-in and how important it is, and some of the ways that we could try to get developers on board the AppSec train. So good security has to work with the business. You can't do a great job if you're against the grain all the time. And we learned that we need to shift security literally everywhere. And so we can do this. You can do this, but it takes way more than writing a check or checking some box. We need real, legitimate change. And so I want you and everyone watching this to be a part of this positive change. Like if you just take one of the things away from this presentation and do it where you are, you will be ahead of the curve. And I've created a PDF with a summary of all the instructions of the whole presentation for you at the end. So there's a link and it's free. And you can just go get the PDF and you can see a video of me doing this in case like you forgot parts and you want to see it again. So you click the link and you get all the stuff. Because I want to make this as easy as possible because I really want change. And I speak at events like this and sponsor events like this because it's so important to me to try to get this message out. And so I want to give you some resources now. And remember, books aren't free, but everything else is. Okay, so first of all, the PDF summary link. So if you are going to take a screenshot, this would be a great slide. This link's going to be on the very last slide that's going to be on when I'm answering questions. So if you want to take a picture then, that's okay. If you miss it, don't worry, I've got you. I have a giant online community of 7,500 or 7,800 people. I guess we're almost at 800. And we have events usually every month, but not in the summer because summer. And basically we have like all sorts of stuff in there. We have free courses, we have lots of conversations, we have people helping people, and you can make a lot of awesome friends. And so please consider this my invitation to you. Sorry, I'm coughing so much. I don't know what's going on. Also, awesome books. So books aren't free, but books are great. I love books. I read many books per month. And so the first 4 are DevOps handbooks. I believe we can't do security right if we're not building software right. And in my opinion, the best and most fun way to build software is with the DevOps methodology. It is the best. And then the last book is by me, Alice and Bob Learn, Application Security. I'm writing my next book right now about secure coding. And me and my mom agree it's pretty good. I have a podcast, the We Hack Purple podcast, where we just have conversations about AppSec. The president of Women's Cyber Jitsu was on in season 1, Mary Galloway. And so like you should check out my podcast. And Resources Me. So I have a Blue Sky account, I have a Mastodon account, I have YouTube, Twitter, LinkedIn, TikTok, Instagram, and I'm She Hacks Purple on all of them. And so I also have a newsletter for me personally. My company has a newsletter. All of the blogs and newsletters and communities are free. And yeah, that's it. And so with that, there is the link again to the presentation slides. And I want to say thank you very, very, very much for having me at this wonderful and amazing event. Thank you. Oh, and now I want to ask if there are questions. You can put questions in the chat if you are on the Zoom app with me, but if you are in Wova, you might need to put it into somewhere else so that we can see it here. I'm wondering if I minimize my slides, if I can see questions in Wova. Let me just check, because I have the Wova app ready. Oh, it says, are you still there? Thanks for a great present. Oh, thank you. You're welcome. Awesome. Are there any more questions? Because if not, then I'm done, but I'm here. I don't know if I should stay on. I wonder if the organizer will come back, but if you have any questions, I'm here and I would love to answer them for you. And I'm also wondering if there's a recording of this that people can see later, because that's the #1 question that every person ever asks, including me. Okay, well, I guess that they are probably in another room. I was supposed to go to exactly 10:02 and I'm 2 minutes over, so I'm sorry to the next speaker if I'm in your space. So I am going to, I guess I'm going to stop sharing now and I'm going to wrap up. Thank you everyone so much for coming. I really appreciate seeing you here and I hope you have a really, really great day. Thank you. And the rest of the conference. Oh my gosh, of course. Bye. Thank you.
Bye. Thank you.